Comic Book Savant, binge at your leisure. Welcome back to the Comic Book Savant podcast. I'm your host, James Harris. This will be a binge at your leisure episode TV talk. We're going to be going over WandaVision episode 5 from Disney Plus and Marvel TV. This episode, we have an expanded cast in this episode. We have our normal players of Elizabeth Olsen, Paul Bettany, Catherine Hahn, Tiana Paris, Randall Park is back in this episode, Kate Dennings, Josh Stamberg, director Tyler Hayward, and to go ahead and let the cat out of the bag, we get Evan Peters as Pietro at the very end of the episode. We're going to go into that further into the review, but that's the cast that our main cast of characters we're dealing with within this episode. I think within this episode, I just want to talk about some plot points at this stage of the review. I've went on and on about the performances throughout the show, and I think that's been the most refreshing part for me, was seeing how they were going to translate everything over. Some people had concerns for them doing it on the small screen. Feige let us know that, they were going to put the same type of money and production behind it. And I spoke on it last episode for episode 4, that I was very happy with that. And I see it has continued on. And so everything matches the quality of the acting, the performances we're getting from the actors from top to bottom. Even the townfolk, the reoccurring townfolk, when they show up, their acting is consistent and it's on a high level as our higher end players, our main characters within this story. So it really helps push everything along. And I can't say enough, because I wasn't really familiar with Elizabeth Olsen in her acting chops till I saw her in a Marvel U, and I didn't know she was the sister of the Olsen twins and all that. I didn't know that till way after the fact that Age of Ultron and stuff was out, and I think I saw promotional stuff, and I was like, then it clicked. It didn't even click with me at first, and I just always liked her from her performance as Wanda in the first movie and how she's progressed, and I've just become more enamored with her as she's going along. And I look forward into seeing her do more things outside of this down the road. And I've seen her in many interviews, and I've just really been enamored, and I just see a bunch of great things for her beyond this. And as they keep using her more, I think she's going to become where some of the other people were more established stars on various levels, where to me she was a practical unknown, to where she's at and where I can see her going out of this. And I feel like she could potentially become a huge star, though it's not really in her personality. She's very laid back and not one for the limelight. From everything in her personality that I've seen in interviews, she's very unlike her sisters in that way, that they embraced it. She's not resistant to it, but she understands the business enough, I guess, from growing up in a family of entertainers at this point her whole life. But she's very much a homebody, and she doesn't seek that kind of attention. But I really think if she chooses to, that she was going to become a huge star. This is really this show has been her coming out party in so many ways. But what triggered these comments was, we had seen in the different trailers in there, and I'm trying to avoid them as much as possible because, I don't know, were they worried about the whole sitcom angle of the show? Were they going to lose potential viewers due to it? So they've been putting out more and more snippets and previews of upcoming episodes to show more that is outside of that sitcom element. And I had seen where they were showing displays of her using her powers and so forth. And we got some of that where it was really a scene where she comes through the portal, dragging a drone, And she uses her mind control powers. They have guns fixed on her, and then she turns it on Director Hayward and had his men point their guns at him. And it was just so powerful. And seeing that darker side of her, which I spoke about in previous episodes, we're seeing this her skirting the line. And like I said, we've seen in the previous movies where her pain causes her to elevate in her power, and she would have these lashes out of extreme power. But now, because she's in this constant state of constant grief, that she is, at her maximum level of power, and it's beyond what anyone thought or predicted she could ever be. Now we do kind of get glimpses on that. We have a scene where Vision starts uncovering the mystery of Westview. He has it's a scene where he's at his job, and one of the workers, he unlocks his mind and brings him out of it, and he starts giving clues that Wanda's in control. Her thoughts and her pain is causing him pain, and his motions and his thoughts are causing him pain, because it's like she's like a kind of a hive mind for everyone else, and they're in pain because of her pain. Everyone else that is connected to her are feeling her pain. Vision puts him back under her spell because he's so hysterical. He was like, I have a sick father, I have to call my sister. And if I remember correctly, we've seen or heard that somewhere before, maybe in the notes, which was a scene that was probably shot out of sequence, because we got in the last episode where they had notes on this one guy, and they were saying when Vision awakens him, he speaks on these things. We hadn't seen that yet. We get to see this scene, so I don't know, was it they rejiggered in editing where those fell in the timeline, but we saw the notes attached to this guy about Vision awakening him, and we were like, we hadn't seen that yet. Well, we get to see it this episode, so we don't know exactly. Now we're getting the balance between the show when we were going in a sitcom world, and then on outside of the Hex world, as Darcy has dubbed it, the Hex. So inside the Hex, we might be, and outside of the Hex could be two different, timelines, and how we're seeing information, or information is presented to us. So that was a little interesting small tidbit that I had noticed, that we knew that he had a sick father that his sister was tending to, and it was something urgent for him to get in contact with her to check on. I guess his father was really, sick. So we that was foreshadowed in the notes, if you caught a glimpse of that in previous episodes, when they happen to linger on a note on this particular guy. But he's starting to uncover the mystery, and he goes back later and starts challenging Wanda's control or involvement in the situation, in this Westview anomaly, as Sword is now calling it. We do know also from a briefing from Director Hayward that Sword had possession of Vision's body, and only 9 days prior to the start of the Westview anomaly, that Wanda broke in the Sword facility to retrieve his body before heading to Westview. So it was I was thinking, and a lot of people threw the theory out, that maybe this Sword facility that she broke into, because we know Cap's boot camp base that we saw in Captain America, the First Avenger, we saw where he did his boot camp training. Then we saw it again in Winter Soldier when they go back. Him and Black Widow go there. I wonder if it was repurposed, because it was a early SHIELD facility. So I wonder if it has been repurposed yet again. because that was also in New Jersey. So she's in Westview. She probably only could make it so far. And maybe after fleeing the facility with Vision's body, Westview might have been the first town, that was some distance away that she thought might be off the grid that she could go to, but maybe we have 4 more episodes left. So maybe that might be revealed as such, but it lent me to think that that could be the case. Once we start getting these little gaps filled in surrounding her liberating his corpse and bringing it to Westview. Like I stated before, I like the balance now because I don't think I could do for just a whole another just full on sitcom episode at this point. I need the balance with the going back, back and forth between the two. So I'm glad they're balancing it out like that, and I hope we continue to get that going forward. This was a slightly longer episode, so it made it less frenetic going back and forth, because instead of it being like 28-30 minutes, it was like 42 or something like that minutes. So it was slightly longer, which is good. Back to what I was saying again about performances, I just think the character arc for Wanda is amazing, and Elizabeth Olsen is like knocking it out of the park. Also, I love the building of Tiona Paris's Monica's character as well. I feel like they're the two standouts, and that's really hard to say in a series like this when we have such seasoned actors across the board with Paul Bettany, Catherine Hahn, Tiona Paris. Like I said, I think she was involved in Mad Men like before this, so she's seasoned. Randall Park, Kat Dennings, all of these are not like minor stars. Kat Dennings, outside of her minor roles before this, in the MCU movie, she's had sitcoms. What was it? Two Broke Girls that ran for multiple years. So she's seasoned as well. So it's really hard to say these two are standing out so heavily when it's such decorated actors across the board, but they're all killing it. But they're just like, to me, a cut up, above, and they're really standouts, and they convey so much range in their emotions that they display on screen. Range as well as emotion as well. They're selling it, and I love how they close in on their faces and how they not just physically sell the emotion and the action, but facially they drive it home and really pull you in to what they're going through and what they're feeling as well. And it's also clear at this point that the commercials link back to extremely traumatizing events in Wanda's life. We go back to, we had in the first episode, we had that Stark Industries toaster that was making the ticking noise, as she talked about when she talked about it in Age of Ultron, that Stark Industries rocket hit their home and they were trapped. Her and Pietro and her parents, and it was just ticking, but it never went off, but they kept hearing the ticking. So it was very interesting in the toaster commercial that towards the end, the little light just came on. It was like tick, 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 tick at the end of the commercial, and you would start hearing the ticking speed up, but then the commercial just cut off. So it links back to that led to her parents' death. Then we had the Strucker watch, which we know that Von Strucker did the experiments with the Mind Stone that unlocked their powers in the first place. Then you had the Hydra Soap, which it was a reference back to an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. episode where Coulson talked about Hydra used a soap to like kind of brainwash people. So Hydra Soap, maybe being mind controlled using the Mind Stone that they were brainwashed to some extent to be used as a weapon. High powered weapon. And in this episode we got Lagos paper towels, which links to the Lagos incident that led to Civil War in Captain America Civil War, where they were fighting and she had that blood on her hands from when she was trying to stop the bomb, and then it went into that building and killed the Wakandan goodwill ambassadors that were doing work there, that triggered the events of the Sokovia Accords and kicked off all those events. So it was like all these traumatizing things or hurtful events to her are being displayed back in these commercials that have been displayed through the different episodes of the show to date. So I thought that was really interesting, and they drove that really home with this commercial this week for sure. Um, Now I want to touch on a few things that I disliked about this episode, which is only a couple of things. Um, I think one of my least favorite parts uh, of this episode were the twins and them constantly aging up. I get they have to do that, and Kevin Feige has talked about numerous times at this point for years about they want to do something with the Young Avengers, and we do know that the twins are involved or integral component of that group. So I get it, but it just was, I don't know. I just could never vibe with them constantly aging up. I mean, they went from being born last episode, from them being in the crib at the beginning of the episode, a few minutes later, them being 5 years old, and then a few minutes later, them being 10 years old. It was just a bit much, and you couldn't really ever connect or attach with them in any way because the actors that were playing the characters were constantly changing. They changed 3 times throughout one episode. And I know with it being a finite amount of episodes, you have to get through the story, and then you're gonna have to be aged up so they can come show up somewhere else down the road. So I get it, but it just made it hard to attach to them in any way, and it broke the suspension of disbelief for me about attaching to them as viable characters or important characters at this point. I guess once they get them to a certain age and they settle on an age and an actor, I can then over time then associate and attach to them in the bigger story. But like right now, no, I'm not feeling it. And it just was like, it was one of those things, one of the few things in this episode that kind of just turned me off or broke me out of the larger, where I'm so immersed in everybody in the stakes of everything for everyone else. I just can't do it. And whenever they were on screen, it kind of just took me out of it. But that was just me. Other people might not feel that way. Also the elephant in the room about the whole recasting as Darcy says, Dr. Darcy Lewis, is the recasting of Pietro was a little too meta for me, and it felt just like stunt casting. Wasn't really a fan of that, either. I think it's a larger meaning. It's spoilers that already been put out there. That is a more something bigger attached to him showing up than what we see on a surface level. I get it. I didn't look at any of those spoilers, but I heard it's more to it than what we're seeing. I rather wait and see it as it plays out. But just in general, how it hit, it wasn't very impactful because I had, heard rumors, not even trying to hear rumors, that he was, on set at some point. So I already kind of knew about this to some extent. I didn't know how it was going to play out. It was rumors that he might be playing different characters. That might still be the case. Who knows? But it remains to be seen. But all in all, for me, this is a solid episode. It's not my favorite by any means, because like I said, it was those few things that knocked a few points off for me. So for acting, I give a 9 out of 10, casting an 8 out of 10, direction a 7 out of 10, special effects always 10 out of 10, and a story a 7 out of 10. So overall, my rating for this episode is 8.25 out of 10. Again, it's a solid episode. It's not a must watch for me, but it was a required viewing. Where I think I rewatched the last episode maybe 2 or 3 times before even, doing my notes and doing the episode for you guys. I've watched this one only one time. I didn't need to watch it again. I wrote my notes as I was going through, and I didn't feel compelled to go back and revisit it at this point. I do know I will do a total binge once the season's totally over. But where I came off such a high off the last episode, this one did kind of bring me down, somewhat. But again, another solid episode. I'm still very happy with the show and how the season is going, and I'm just looking for what the next surprises that are coming for us around the corner next week. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. As always, you can check me out over at comicbooksavant.com. You can follow me over on Twitter or Instagram at comicbooksavant. Also, if you want merch, I have a Teespring store, or they just rebranded themselves as, I think, Spring or whatever, but the links are on the website. So if you want merch, I have hoodies, t-shirts, stickers, the whole nine. So if you want to support the show, you can head over to comicbooksavant.com and click on the store link, and it'll take you over to the merch store, and you can buy some cool merch, support the show, and rep the show as well. But that's all I have for you guys for this episode. As always, you guys stay safe out there. Love you so much for your continued support. Again, we'll be back next week with another episode of Binge at Your Leisure TV Talk WandaVision. Until then, take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.